Hello, everyone. We're just going to give it a minute just for everyone to get into the meeting and we will kick off. But thank you so much for joining us today. We are here in Ireland for anyone that is not in Ireland, and it's actually a lovely day. So the webinar today is Pathways to Tech, Exploring Master's Opportunities for All Backgrounds. So I'm just going to talk you through the agenda for today. So I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction as to why we've decided to do this webinar. Then I'm going to pass over to Phil, who's going to talk a bit more about UCC. Then we'll pass over to the program directors and we'll talk about each of the 4 programs that can transition you into more of a technology role. And we're going to have some time for Q&A as well at the end. Now, if you want to ask a question, please feel free to use the Q&A box, or even if you have comments as you go through and you just want to put something into the chat, you can feel free to do that as well. Now, before I go any further, I suppose I'll introduce myself. My name is Mairead. I work in the business school as a recruiter, and I'm delighted to have you all here today. And we'll just talk through a bit about, I suppose, where this webinar kind of idea came from and the benefits of digital fluency. So I myself studied computers when I was in university. I didn't know what I wanted to do and I just picked it. I didn't even have a computer at home. So I was totally at a loss starting off, and I didn't exactly say that like I was really good at it. I actually found it like, a different, mindset completely. But I, now looking back, learned so much from my undergrad, and in terms of problem solving, in terms of like not being scared of technology. And I've always worked in roles where I almost become the expert in tech. And I've worked across different industries, but mainly within like tech industries, but now being in UCC in the educational kind of world, I think that having a technology skill set can really open doors for you and set you apart from other people. So some of the benefits are that there's a high demand for tech across all industries. So it's not just working in technology industries. Tech is required in finance, in retail, in like universities. And even I've been talking with a lot of NGOs lately, and I asked 13 NGOs what kind of skill set they were looking for in their graduates, and digital fluency came up in every conversation. So it's really a required skill, and it's not going away. The other thing is no coding, no problem. Like everyone thinks of software engineering when they think of tech, but there's so many different roles out there. Some are incredibly heavy on tech and some are very light in tech. Sometimes you need people that can be the intermediate between someone that knows a lot about tech and just somebody who has no clue. So depending on where you want to go in tech, there's so many opportunities, and software engineering is just one area. And the fantastic thing about these programs is that they take it that you have no computing knowledge at all. So it starts at a very basic level. There's high earning potential and career growth. So I suppose because it's such a in-demand skill, like people who work within these tech roles often have fantastic career opportunities and lots of growth as well. The tech world is always changing, so there's always opportunity to upskill and to evolve your career. It also future-proofs your career, because as I said, it's not going away anytime soon. Technology is just going to continue to evolve, and it's a career that always sets you in the path where you have to be adaptable and ready to change and continue to learn. There's so much diversity and flexibility in the tech world as well. As I said, that you can have roles that are very kind of low tech touch points compared to ones that are very heavy in tech. There's just so many different opportunities, and within the programs that we have in UCC, we have such strong connections with industry as well, that already while you're doing your masters, you're beginning to network, to build relationships, to help support your career aspirations. it's a transferable skill set as well that really sets you apart. And we're going to learn today a bit more about that and how people who've come from non-tech backgrounds have used technology to really set them apart and kind of change their career trajectory. And also there's an opportunity to work globally. It's a skill set that will allow you to travel. Even working in electronic arts, I got to visit Austin like 3 times a year and absolutely loved it. So it really opens up opportunities for traveling and working in global companies with people from across the world. So that's why I'm very passionate about helping people see that technology is somewhere where everyone can thrive and that it really sets you apart from other people. And I'm going to pass over now to Phil Neville, and he's going to talk through a little bit more about UCC before we move to our program directors.
Thanks, Mairead. Hi, everyone. You're all very welcome to this webinar about postgraduate programs focused on tech and all things digital for graduates from all backgrounds. So my name is Phil Neville, and I'm the EU Postgraduate Recruitment Officer at the College of Arts, Celtic Studies and Social Sciences here at UCC. And to start with, I did want to say a few words about University College Cork, because I know we do have some attendees joining us from outside of Cork, from outside of Ireland, and you're all very welcome. So the university was established as Queen's College Cork back in 1845 and is based 15 minutes walk from Cork city centre. And this year we're actually marking our 180th anniversary. And the central campus is based on 42 acres of wooded ground with different university buildings nearby and within Cork City as well. And the image on the right is of our main quadrangle, the quad as it's known. It's the oldest part of the campus, and it's a tradition on your graduation day to get a photo taken on the quad with your diploma. But it's also meant to be bad luck to walk on the grass on the quad before you finish your studies. So just watch out for that if you join us in September, which I hope some of you will. In terms of our student population, we're home to over 25,000 students, with almost 5,000 international students joining us from over 100 countries. And UCC in the QS World Rankings in 2024 was ranked in the top 300, climbing to number 273. And that's something we're very proud of, especially when you consider that over 5,000 universities were in consideration for last year's rankings. We're also a very green university, and last year we were awarded our 5th green flag in recognition of the university's ongoing sustainability and biodiversity promotion efforts. And we're also ranked the 4th most sustainable university in 2024 by the UI Green Metric Rankings. We're home also to over 50 clubs and 100 different societies, so our students can really get involved in a wide range of sports and activities which are important to them. And on the right, you can see just an image of George Boole, who was the first professor of mathematics at UCC and really laid the foundations for the information age with his work on Boolean algebra. So I thought it was particularly important to just acknowledge his place in UCC's history today. And there's also a bust of George Boole outside of the library building, and it's supposed to be good luck to rub his nose before the exams, before your exams start. So we're in our final month of teaching at the moment, so no doubt it'll be a common sight at the end of next month once our exams start. And to give you an overview of the campus and what it looks like, this is just a brief aerial view of the campus. The quad is kind of in the middle there, number 6, with different university buildings surrounding that central point, like the student centre, the student hub, the library as well, and the O'Reilly building, where you'd likely have many of your classes if you're taking one of the programs that we're going to be talking about today. And just to give you a context as well of where UCC is, so we're based in Cork, which is the southernmost city in Ireland. We're about 20 minutes away from Cork International Airport. Scenic East and West Cork are really on our doorstep, about an hour away, and we're about 3 hours by bus or car from Dublin as well, the capital. And Cork is well connected to other cities around Ireland, and like I say, if you want to go further afield during your studies to the UK or mainland Europe, we're well connected by different air routes as well. Okay, so that was, I suppose, just a whistle-stop tour, a brief introduction to UCC before we move on to the presentation part of the webinar. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Dr. Stephen Tracy to talk us through the Information Systems for Business Performance MSc. Thanks very much, Stephen.
Thanks, Philip. Great overview for UCC and indeed the campus. Hello to everyone that's joining us today. Pleasure to be speaking with you. So today my role is just to bring you a little bit of familiarity with the program that I direct, which is the MSc in Information Systems for Business Performance. I grant you that it's a long-winded title, What does that mean essentially? What ISBP is essentially a conversion course for students that wouldn't necessarily have a huge amount of technical experience or experience in coding, but who are looking at trying to get a foothold in the industry as part of a burgeoning career. So from the context of today's presentation, I'm just going to showcase a little bit about what we do in ISBP, the structure of the different modules, the thesis component that you might do as well if you take part in this course, and what the overall output then for graduates might be as well. So Philip, we might just skip to the next slide there. So again, just to reiterate Philip's point, Philip had some fantastic pictures of UCC. It's a beautiful campus on the south coast of Ireland. We're uniquely positioned between, we'll say, Europe and the United States, and as a result, since Brexit happened, we actually have seen a massive influx of multinational companies setting up shop as well here in both Cork and Dublin and closer afield. So while we're a small country, we definitely punch above our weight when it actually comes to international collaborations with organizations. And one of the main strengths for ISBP is that we have a deeply rooted industry connection with organizations, and we facilitate and we work with them and help them in tackling real world problems that impact both them as an organization, but also in some cases industry at large or society as well. So yeah, more on that in a second. But again, just a nice little picture of the quad that we have here in UCC. Thanks, Philip. Might go for the next one. So as I mentioned before, what is ISBP? So ISBP is, for all intents and purposes, a conversion course for students that are looking at trying to get a foothold in the tech/management sector. Much like Mairead, I actually started my career a little bit differently. I actually did an undergraduate in microbiology. And at the end of that particular degree, I was taking a look at what the job market was doing, and much like what Mairead said, technology is an area where there's always going to be demand for the skills. There's always going to be demand for that sense of insight that you have on how best to blend people, processes, and technologies together, and it impacts all different industries across the board. So ISBP essentially caters for students who are looking at trying to get into that field, and down through the years, we've had students come through the ranks that have come from the likes of commerce, nursing, law, veterinary medicine, science. So it really is, if you are interested in technology, if you're interested in how people use it to maximize value, this could be the course for you. It's been quite prolific in recent years for winning or being recognized as being one of the best postgraduate courses here in Ireland. We won it 6 years straight. And actually only today, topically enough, we've become shortlisted for the best master's program again in Ireland in the category of science, technology, and built environment by Education Awards here in Ireland. So we're a well-established, well-recognized master's program. It is a full-time 12-month course. It is absolutely quite intensive, as you'd expect from a master's program in any institution. How we would envision a student's, I suppose, weekly experience, it's probably around the bones around 38 hours. On a weekly basis, and that then is split between lectures, seminars, case studies, presentations, your lab tutorials, etc. But we understand that it is an intensive course. You're juggling multiple different modules, multiple different assignments, but we're trying to maximize your exposure, familiarity, and experience, and most importantly, your competence levels, I suppose, in this area. Thank you, Mairead. So Philip, yeah, we might pop to the next slide. So this essentially is what the structure of the overall program looks like. So the typical academic year here in Ireland is split over 3 different semesters. Semester 1 takes us from September until December. Semester 2 takes us from January until April. And then semester 3 then is during the summer months, which usually kicks off around May, goes through then until maybe July or August or so. So in semester 1, it really is kind of introducing the students to a more kind of a theoretical approach to the different topics that you'd find in industry. So you see here modules the likes of IT project management. My colleague, Dr. Stephen McCarthy here actually also gives us a wave, Stephen. He actually takes over that module for us. We have business decision support. We've got sustainable digital business models, system analysis, database analysis and design. There's a little bit of I suppose, exposure to, we'll say, coding for the students, in addition to just the theoretical application as to how organizations use these technologies to maximize their value. I suppose the main thing that we have here in semester 1 is this digital leadership seminar series, where on a weekly basis, industry mentors, industry leaders come into the program and deliver key talks, keynote speeches to the class. We have speakers from the likes of Dell Technologies, PwC, Deloitte, Ernst & Young, pretty big companies in their own right, but they're also pitching challenges and ideas to students about, we'll say, the likes of AI, about the likes of cybersecurity, the likes of innovation, all these topical different areas that impact any organization across the field. They're looking at really kind of exploring how they can utilize these different phenomena to make themselves a little bit more valuable. So that again is the kind of the baseline exposure in semester one. Semester two then is just rolling up the sleeves and getting a little bit more hands-on. And you're taking that theoretical approach to a more kind of an application-based approach. So again, digital governance and compliance, business intelligence and data analytics, business models for disruptive technology, application design. You're ramping up your knowledge, you're expanding your repertoire, and you're putting things in place to kind of connect the dots based on what was built in semester one. As I said then, essentially in semester three, that's your research dissertation. You'll be spending 3 months executing your thesis component of the study, which I'll speak more about there now in a second as well. Thanks, Philip. Next slide, please. So in terms of the thesis component, as I mentioned in semester one, organizations will come into the class, give you a challenge, and that then essentially is what a group of students will work on as part of their thesis for the academic year. In semester two, you're going to, so we'll say, for example, this year now we have PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, coming in investigating cybersecurity, and they're looking at how, from a risk management perspective, organizations can deal with that issue. So semester two starts off with, say, for that particular group, and they're going to research about cybersecurity. They're going to take a look at what attack vectors are out there, what's the most, I suppose, common way of mitigating these attacks, how to be vigilant, how to be resilient, everything really to kind of really maximize their knowledge about it. And then in semester three, once they have an idea as to the research question that they're trying to tackle, they go out and get data. They try and make their findings, they present their findings and recommendations to the organization. And it's actually quite important for students, especially when it comes to the job market, because after the program, you can say, I have worked with a leading company in industry. We have tackled this particular problem. We've developed this solution. It's being put into practice. And it's giving you kind of exposure and experience in a consultancy-based approach with these organizations that are juggling with these real-world issues. And the sample of the different companies we're working with this year are just on your screen: Aptiv, Cloudera, SmartTech, PwC, Dell Technologies, Deloitte, and Filet. So this is really important for our students because it allows you that practical connection to industry. It allows you to test what you're learning here from a theoretical perspective in practice. You're developing a critical sense of thinking. You are promoting yourself. You are engaging with a different network of experts throughout the course of these projects. And again, as I said, you're developing the analytical and critical thinking skills needed not only to address such challenges, but that will also stand to you in time for whatever future career that you're looking at trying to progress with going forward. Thanks, Philip. We might go to the next slide. I'm just conscious of finishing up. So in terms of where the students go, again, we do develop real world solutions as part of these projects. We do work really tightly with these companies. They value our input because we've actually helped an awful lot of organizations in the past solve really important problems for them. Most recently, we were working with Deloitte, and they were looking at, from a digital transformation perspective, how might you go about allocating risk or assess risk or evaluate risk? So based on the thesis component that they conducted in ISBP, they have since actually presented that at a conference. It was actually presented in Bangkok in December for the International Conference on Information Security. It won an award for the best track paper. It was nominated for the best overall conference paper. And other students have gone on to publish their works in different conferences as well. The International Conference on Cyber Warfare and Security, the European Conference on Information Systems, European Conference on Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Irish Academy of Management, UK Academy for Information Systems. Essentially, students kind of view this route as having something else on your CV or your resume to talk about, to say, this is the caliber of innovative problem-solving thinking that I have actually developed as a result of this particular program. You're able to talk about it, as I said, engaging with companies, developing these solutions to tackle real-world problems it's been proven to be really, really effective in that job market for the students as well. So again, I'm just conscious of time. I might just go to the last slide. This was a group photo of ourselves last year. Again, the academic year is probably topped off in July, where the students stand up in what's known as the Aula Maxima, a room here in UCC. They present their thesis. This is what we've done for the past year. These are the findings, recommendations. They present it in front of the staff, the class, the industry mentors, any visiting companies that might want to take part as well. And there's a bit of a Q&A session afterwards, and we then celebrate the finishing of the course. But it's a great social mix, social blend, and it's very enjoyable as well. It's not all work. We do kind of try and get the students to enjoy themselves in a social setting as well, and we facilitate different means to do that as well. Again, conscious of time, apologies. I'll probably have to cut it there. But if anyone listening wants to touch base with me, you can find me on the below links. My email is stephen.tracy@ucc.ie. You can also find me on LinkedIn, just searching for Stephen Tracy or Stephen Tracy 1. So I will hand it back over to Mairead and Philip, and thanks for listening.
That's great. Thanks so much, Stephen, for providing us that overview of the program. And yeah, great to see all the students there in the Aula Maxima. That's one of the part of the quad, one of the oldest parts of the university as well. So it's still in use. It's not just for show. So yes, moving on now, I'll hand over to Dr. Stephen McCarthy to discuss the MSc in Business Analytics here at UCC. Thanks very much, Stephen.
Thanks, Philip. So hello, everyone. So my name is Stephen McCarthy, and I'm a Program Director, MSc Business Analytics. So I'm going to talk about the overview of the curriculum and some of the distinguishing features of the program. The structure is quite similar to ISBP in terms of how your week looks and the structure of the semesters. But in particular, some differences. We're very focused on how to get the power out of data to make real world changes in organizations. Also, just to mention the logo to the right. So for the last 2 years, MSc Business Analytics has been listed in the QS rankings for business analytics programs, which is an international ranking, and was called out as #1 for value for money among all other business analytics programs in Ireland and among the top 100 in terms of thought leadership. So something we were quite proud of. If you go to the next slide, please, Phil. So as I said, the program is really focused on getting the most out of data. So today, organizations are collecting data on everything, on work processes, on employees, on customers, on competitors, and the transformational opportunities that come from that data is being able to make better decisions. So whereas before managers might have to rely on instinct or intuition, now we have hard data to make those decisions. And MSc BA is a combination of business and analytic methods and modules. So for instance, on the business side, you'll be exposed to design thinking approaches from my colleague, Dr. Andrew Pope, who will talk next. You'll also learn about sustainability and the importance of that to modern businesses. And alongside that then is all the analytics modules you expect. You'll be exposed to techniques for descriptive analytics, which is what's happened, predictive analytics, what could happen, and prescriptive, what should happen. So all very focused though, again, like Stephen Tracy said before, about real world problems and relevant to organizations that we work with as well. Next slide, please. So first, just to briefly mention the application requirements, it's slightly different for MSc Business Analytics. There's quite a low barrier to entry, but you're expected to have one module in a quantitative subject in your undergraduate. So this could be a module you took on statistics, mathematics, accounting, or economics. It may just have been one semester that you took the module, but it's that you've some exposure to quantitative subjects. But in terms of coding or prior tech experience, there is no requirement. So we take students from all disciplines, from arts, from commerce, from chemistry, whatever the subject might be. And similar again to Mairead and Stephen as well, I too came from a non-tech background. So my undergraduate was in commerce. So I've made that transition myself too, and can definitely say it's really worthwhile. It's such an exciting sector to be in, with all the changes going on with data analytics as well as AI. But typically, some of the things we hear from candidates, they would say, my background is in IT, I don't know how to code, I'm not a techie person. And I would just allay all your concerns around that straight away. In particular, the curriculum is set up to provide all the supports you need to go from no knowledge to being very proficient in different techniques and tools. So the lectures, which will be scheduled each week, will start at beginner's level. Sorry, could you go back, Philip? So starting at beginner's level, there'll also be tutorials dedicated where you one-on-one with a tutor to explain concepts further, and also lots of digital resources as well from Sage, and also licenses for digital platforms that will be included as part of your registration. Next slide. We also have a lot of connections to industry. Some of the companies on the right are companies that have been engaged with our applied research project in semester 3 in past years. And we also have an adjunct professor who's a data strategy lead for Heineken Ireland, or sorry, Heineken EMEA territory. So it's taking what you're learning in the course and putting it into practice with the industry mentor to develop solutions to problems in organizations. And also just a sample of projects that have come in the past from students. So students pick the area they want to work on as an individual proposal, and then gather together their ideas to form groups of about 5 or 6 students. So we've had projects in, for instance, human resources, where business analytics is used for screening CVs, also helping financial institutions make better decisions around loan applications, and agriculture as well, using data analytics to increase crop yield. And the Sustainable Development Goals, as I mentioned, also being a really core component to the curriculum as well. Next slide. Also, just to highlight success stories. So the picture on the left is a graduate from last year. And just to highlight that she came also from a commerce background, very little tech in terms of her undergraduate degree, but really excelled in the program. She's now working as a quality assurance member of the Business Solutions and AI team at Verizon. And the picture is actually taken as well from Ignite Startup event. So she's with her former student colleagues, has begun working on a new company, which is leveraging the work they did in their applied research project. So it's about managing wait times in healthcare organizations. I think when I spoke with her, really she wants to highlight that there's so much opportunities in UCC, both as part of the curriculum and equally extracurricular as well. So she was class rep for the program, but also a peer lead in UCC. Got involved in lots of societies, and it shows the value, I think, of both sides of student life, both the academic and also the social and society engagements that you can engage in. Next slide. And in terms of our identity, we really emphasize the learning by doing approach. So straight away, you hit the ground running, getting your hands on different types of techniques and tools that are used for business analytics. And through that engagement, as well, through engagement of readings, you develop your own voice to learn how they work first off, but equally then apply them in different scenarios. And equally, a big emphasis on presentations. So we have a lot of stand-ups throughout the year where students present their understanding of different topics, and also lightning talks where we ask students to come up with ideas and present that to the class. So it's really about, I guess, trying to future-proof your career, especially in the age of AI disruption, to get these really core business skills as well, alongside the more technical side of the modules. Next slide. And finally then, so Stephen previously mentioned semester 3 in ISBP. So similarly for business analytics, we have a applied research project, which also builds in semester 1 and 2. So students develop a unique idea or a problem that can be solved with business analytics. And really, we emphasize an agile approach here as well, where it's constant prototyping. You're developing iterations of an idea and make it more sophisticated over time with your team members. So it does, it's my time alarm. So it does make it a lot more manageable. What is a 30-credit module being broken down into smaller steps, and also working with industry mentors as well. But I think that's my 10 minutes, so I'll hand it back to you, Philip.
Thanks very much, Stephen, for giving us an overview of the Business Analytics MSc. So moving on now, I will hand over to Dr. Andrew Pope to talk to us about the MSc in Design and Development of Digital Business. Thanks very much, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Philip. So good afternoon, everybody. So I'm one of the co-directors. I'm one of 3 co-directors on the MSc Design and Development of Digital Business. Like the other courses, it's a conversion course. So essentially we are looking at targeting students who have perhaps done a non-technical undergraduate program and are interested in pursuing a career in technology. So anybody who does our course has not done an undergraduate program in technology and is trying to kind of break into that sector. If you move on to the next slide, please, Philip. So I suppose the way in which the course is kind of operationalized is very similar to Stephen in business analytics, and also in terms of information systems for business performance. So we deliver 6 lectures per semester. So there's 6 subjects in each semester, 6 taught subjects. And in addition to that, then we have an applied research and development project that goes across kind of both semesters and into the summer. When we were kind of designing the program, what we were trying to do is we were trying to identify the skills that employers wanted students to have to make sure that they had impact once they join the technology sector. And our curriculum is based on 4 kind of key pillars. So all of our modules fall into one of these 4 kind of key pillars. And the first one is analysis. So we try to give our students those skills so that they can go into an organization, they can understand the organization, how it works, they can understand and identify what the real problems are, and understand also the stakeholders that are impacted by problems. In the module in the design pillar, then we look at trying to equip students with the kind of the design skills to try and generate ideas to solve those problems based on that understanding, and also to prototype and test solutions to the problem. So, I mean, really what we're trying to do is we're trying to equip creatively minded students from non-technology backgrounds with design and technology skills to solve real world problems. So once students have kind of understood the problem, they've empathized with the stakeholders, they have generated ideas, they've prototyped and tested them. The next phase then is actually implementing them. So we do teach our students how to design, think, but we also really put an emphasis on doing. So this is a really practical course. And we try to equip our students with the the technical skills to actually build digital software. So we have a number of subjects which you'll see in a moment, which deal with kind of the implementation of digital solutions. And then, of course, if you implement a digital solution, it's important to maximize your likelihood of success. So we also teach students about kind of business strategy, business models as well, to maximize the likelihood of success of all of our digital solutions. So, Philip, if you move on to the next slide as well, please. So this is just kind of a brief sample of the kind of modules that we do in semester one. Now, because we're dealing with technology and because the technology sector is changing, the reality, I think, for my course and the other courses that you're listening to today, they change every few years. They have to be kind of refreshed to keep them up to date. So we engage with employers to make sure that we're teaching the right things. As I said, this is maybe a little bit of an example of what we cover in semester one. So we teach our students user experience design, which is we teach our students how to use a tool called Figma to design software and experiences. We equip our students with the kind of the skills and expertise to understand how data is used within organizations and to create kind of data structures that allow them to maximize value from that data. We do teach computer programming to our students. We teach it from introductory level. So we teach them front-end programming, which is basically teaching them how to design what you see on your screen in front of you, whether it's a mobile application or a desktop application. And we also introduce Python as a programming language, and we teach fundamentals, the building blocks of computer programming using Python as well. And of course, that business analysis module then is really about understanding, gathering, eliciting requirements, understanding stakeholders and stuff like that as well. If you move on to the next slide, please, Philip. In semester two, so in semester one, we give students the kind of the practical skills to build data structures. In semester two, we get students to think a little bit about how organizations can leverage data and data strategy. I myself teach service design. So in addition to creating kind of software, we also teach our students how to create experiences and design services as well. We talk about things like I mentioned a moment ago. So we do front-end development, which is designing kind of what you see when you interact with a web page or a mobile application. In back-end development, we also teach the students how to create that logic to create interactive applications. We have a module on digital strategy. And just this year, or rather next year, we are introducing an application or a module called AI for Rapid Application Development, whereby we will be using AI to equip students with the skills to very quickly prototype working software using things like Anthropic's Claude and OpenAI's ChatGPT and things like that. So if you move on to the next slide, please, Philip. So we take all of those modules across semester 1 and 2, and our kind of capstone project, it's called the Design and Development Project. Rather than a thesis, you are creating a digital solution. So what happens throughout semester 1 and semester 2 is we have companies coming in every week presenting to students, telling them a little bit about their sector, their industry, problems they're facing, and then they pose design challenges to our students. And at the end of semester 2, then the students get into groups and they work together to try and come up with a digital solution to address those problems. So they can work with one of our client companies. We've worked over the past with companies like Dell, Cloudera, RTE, McKesson, HSE, Global Reviews, ESB. Or maybe perhaps as a student, you identified a problem that isn't being looked at by any other organization. And in those scenarios, we help the students to kind of create a digital solution and start up to deliver a solution for that problem as well. The project is unique in that we operationalize it over 4 3-week design sprints. So rather than developing something and then delivering it at the end of the summer, for each of those design sprints, the students have to actually give us a report and some working software across those 4 design sprints. The first one is basically trying to understand the problem. The second sprint is where the students take their understanding of the problem, their market research, their academic research. They try to generate ideas to solve that problem. In sprint 3, they use Figma and Miro to prototype the software, going from low fidelity to high fidelity solutions. They do usability testing with users and the client to make sure they're on the right track. And then the final sprint is about kind of creating and coding that working piece of software. And at the end of the summer, then they present and they pitch their solution to us, but also to the other industry partners as well. So it's really practical and using some of the things they've learned across all of those modules and applying it in a very practical way that will give them great experience for the working world. So Philip, if you maybe move on to the next slide, please. So here's just an example of some of the students pitching their projects. As I said, it's attended by academic staff, but it's also intended by all of those industry partners who attend. And it's an opportunity for the students to sell their solution, but also to sell themselves as well to potential employers as well. And if you move on to the next one, please, Philip. So I suppose one of the really important things that you'll probably be thinking about when you're choosing a postgraduate program is what kind of roles might you be aiming for? And the reality is with this program, and indeed the other programs as well, there's a number of different roles that are available. So we have students that have worked in the area of UX research and design, product management, technology consultancy, business analysis, software development, quality assurance, database administration. So it really does open up this whole world of new careers to you, irrespective of what your undergraduate degree was. And I know I'm conscious I'm running out of time, so maybe if you move on to the next slide, please, Philip. Just to give you a very quick example, just to finish up. So Martina joined us from Italy. Martina did an undergraduate in economics. She traveled to do the course. One thing that's kind of cool about the course is we don't pretend that you haven't done an undergraduate program. We try to leverage what you know already and then add some additional skills. And Martina is a really good example of that. She got to use her kind of analytical mindset from her undergraduate program. And then we fleshed it out with this creative design thinking approach as well. So at the time in which I took this screen cap, Martina was working as a data analyst from PwC. She's since moved on to a new role in PwC, where she is a digital and innovation consultant. And she's one of loads of stories of people who've come from very diverse backgrounds. We have students from biochemistry, we have students from law, we have students from criminology. And we take those students and we give them technical and design skills to solve real world problems. Okay, so thank you very much. That is it for me.
Thanks very much, Andrew. And yeah, great to hear that feedback from Martina when she joined us from Italy. It wasn't, from Cork or Ireland as well, and came and joined us. So I know there's people in the audience as well who may be in the same boat, watching from overseas. So I suppose moving to our final program presentation today, I'll hand over now to Dr. Stephen Roddy, who will take us through the MA in Digital Arts and Humanities and also its sister program, the fully online Digital Cultures MA. Thanks very much, Stephen.
Hi, and thanks everyone for coming. So yeah, that's me, Stephen Roddy, and I'm a course leader for Digital Arts and Humanities MA and also the Digital Cultures MA, which is our online one. Okay, so first things first, can we just move on to that next slide there, Phil? What exactly is Digital Arts and Humanities? So this is kind of the first question we often get from students. It's kind of a new field. It's really only been around in an academic context since about 2008. But of course, we've been using technology in the arts and humanities for many, many years. So it's building on kind of a long tradition, starting with maybe the printing press. Other people would argue musical instruments that preceded the printing press are also kind of an integration of technology with arts and humanities. But essentially, the way we conceive it here in UCC is that digital arts and humanities sits at the intersection of technology and arts and humanities subjects. So it applies ideas and frameworks from the arts and the arts and humanities to guide how we work with technology, but also that relationship works the other way around as well. So we also apply technological tools to answer questions in the arts and humanities. So for example, we might do text analysis to answer questions about specific pieces of literature, or we might do signal processing to answer questions about specific pieces of film or music, for example. So this real interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary is a term we like to use, kind of nature to digital humanities. And it gives us this kind of unique opportunity to bring both a hands-on approach that comes from working with the technology and also an academically kind of rigorous focus on the actual theory that all of this is grounded in, the humanities portion of things. So in one of these courses, either of them, you will be expected to acquire and integrate quite complex methods and ideas for both the humanities and computing, and to get those ideas and kind of bring them together. So one of the basic misconceptions about the humanities and the sciences is that, that they don't mix at all and there's no real touch point, and that in fact there's essentially two kinds of person: the kind of person who excels in humanities contexts and the kind of person who excels in kind of scientific and engineering contexts. And my own background is a mix of both, of a background in music composition on one hand and also engineering on the other hand, and that kind of like mixture of arts and humanities kind of runs through a lot of us and what we do in the department. We try to bring that into the course, so you can expect to be getting into the nitty-gritty both technically but also really getting into the nitty-gritty on the theoretical side, on the basis of whichever humanities subject it is that you're bringing to the course. So we don't expect anyone to come in with these skills, but you will be developing them as you're here. So it is essentially another conversion course kind of idea. You can come in from any background essentially. You'll be bringing in what you have, and we'll be working with you to kind of like work the technology into what it is that you do. So this kind of practical focus then we see is like reflected across a lot of our assignment strategies, or assessment strategies, I should say, which focus heavily on assignment. So there's very little pen and paper tests. It's usually in a class you'll be given an assignment, certain amount of time to do it, and then come back, usually present your work and talk about your work in some context. Just to give a little bit of an overview of the actual modules that are involved. So we've got some core modules. We've got 5 core modules that everyone takes. Humanities and New Technologies is one. Communities of Practice and Digital Scholarship, Getting Started with Graduate Research, and the Digital Humanities Institute. And I'm going to talk through a few of these to give a little bit of a sense of like a taste of what you get in each of those different classes. So the Digital Humanities Institute, for example, is a collaboration we do with the library, where essentially at the start of the year, you decide that what you want to explore. You're going to pick something from the archives in the library. You're going to explore it in depth and put together a video essay about whatever it is that you've chosen from the archives. So this is a team project where at the end you have to deliver this video essay in essentially a symposium. We run a big symposium at the end and everyone presents their work. They come up, they introduce the video essay and present it. And throughout the year, you'll be working with our colleagues in the library, taking classes in the different skills that you need to put something like this together. So you'll be doing different multimedia classes. You might be doing audio editing, video capture. You get all of that, those kind of skills in a kind of hands-on approach over in the Digital Scholarship Studio in the library, and that kind of culminates at the end of the year in this really nice symposium day. We also have a few other kind of points at which the theory of the humanities crosses over with technology. Another important module we run is models, simulations, and games, which comes at game design from the much broader field from which, when we think of game design, we often think of computer games, but obviously, there's the mathematical side of game theory, and there's the much broader like cultural context in which games have emerged, and we couch it in that and teach it through that essentially. Can we just move on to the next slide there, Phil? And just to give you a sense in a little bit more detail of how exactly these classes cross the arts on one side and technology on the other. So this is just a little snapshot from a class I teach, History and Theory of Digital Arts. So it's an introduction to key visual and musical artists who've worked with computers. So since the 1950s, we've had computers, and there's been many artists who've worked with them and who've helped to like shape how we have designed computers, and also how we design and how we use technology has shaped the arts as well. So we outline how this has actually taken place over the 20th century. But at the same time, at the start of a class, you're introduced to a new concept. It might be an artist, might be an arts movement. You're introduced to the idea, and then you start in the second part of the class to pick that apart using code. So as you go, you'll be learning to code in P5.js, which is essentially a library for JavaScript. So JavaScript, so it runs in a browser, and it's a library that allows you to kind of like create visuals and sound and audio. And we use it to pick apart these kinds of pieces that have been created over the years. So you can kind of understand how these things come together and the kind of like technical skills required to put something together. Because again, coming back to that misconception that like never the two shall meet between arts and humanities, we're really trying to dissolve that heavily here. And that, this slide, in fact, has a little example on the right of a famous piece, Vera Molnar piece that was produced during the 20th century using computing. She coded this herself and had a plotter actually create the piece. And then on the left, we have the actual code that we would use today to create a recreation of that piece. Can we just move on to the next slide there? So, a big part of what you'll be doing in the Digital Humanities and Digital Cultures programs are your dissertation. So essentially, each year we assign, a supervisor to bring you through the dissertation process. We try to pair you with someone who has essentially the kinds of technical skills that you need to push beyond what we've done already in the last 2 semesters and bring it somewhere else. So a nice example of that is a project last year done by one of our students, Magdalena, who was interested in her own background before she came in was in history. She was very much interested in digital approaches to history and using digital technologies to do something more with her study of history, essentially. So she was interested in how the traditional dress in Solin in Croatia had been impacted by migration over the years. So it's a town in Croatia that an awful lot of different groups had moved through over the years, and this had a huge impact on the dress. But all of this information she knew was there. It was there in the archives, and there's photographic evidence of it, some in black and white. And then there was like text evidence of it and records of it, but it had never all been brought together, and there was no surviving garment anywhere of these different pieces. So she went into the archives in Zagreb, and she did her archival research. She got the records, she got testimonies from people she knew around Solin that she was able to interview and able to reach out to and get involved in the project. And she was able to get old photographs, a lot of which were black and white, and so she didn't have to interview people and find out how these things were colorized and how they were created. But the idea was to recreate the dress as it stood at the different points in time so that you could kind of trace the history of migration through the change of the traditional dress. And our idea then was to create some kind of digital representation of this so that we could have in a single place these 3D models representing how the dress had actually changed over time. So she took all of this information, put it together, and collated the sources to model the dresses herself in 3D modeling software. And so these kinds of projects kind of allow our students to engage with like archives, with real world institutions at national levels in the kind of cultural and creative arts sectors. So museums, cultural agencies, to work with them to actually create some kind of new pieces of work. And can we pop on to the next slide? Which is kind of like where we sit when it comes to our student success stories. So our MA students generally go into the technical jobs in the arts and culture sectors. So a lot of them go on to work in museums, a lot of them go on to work in art galleries, and they're usually in the cultural sector and creative arts sectors. Now, there's examples to the contrary. So some people go into like the traditional technology route, but for the most part, what we're doing is we're giving people the skills to work in the technical sides of these places because, the tech industry exists, but also every other industry has been impacted by the tech industry, and the world we live in is increasingly digital. And this gives people the skills to go into those sides of the world and build a career. One such example recently was Max Darby, who did a BA and MA in UCC in digital humanities and philosophy, and has since moved on to become AI solutions architect at Musgraves, and is doing an industry-sponsored PhD in AI applications, and has also lectured with us at UCD and in Trinity over the last few years as well. And that's it, all of it from us, I think. If you have any questions, do email.
That's great. Thanks so much, Stephen, for the overview of the Digital Arts and Humanities program too, and great to hear that example of a student, actually getting into an archive and building out their piece of work based on the real world examples as well. I think I am conscious of time, but hopefully everyone can stay with us for a few more minutes. We move on to a bit of a Q&A.
Yeah, I have a question here. I suppose we'll put it out to everyone. That might be the end of our presentation then, but what's one piece of advice that you'd give to someone who's interested in getting into tech, but they're not sure if they should take the leap? So I'll start in order of how you present it, Stephen Tracy.
A piece of advice before getting into tech, is it?
Yeah.
I guess you'll know pretty quickly yourself as to whether or not it's an area that interests you if you take a look at what's actually happening out there on a daily basis in the industry at large. So I'd get a little bit familiar. I'd listen to, at a real high level, superficial level, TED Talks, how technology has played a role in recent years, and indeed going back a good couple of years, how it's shaped society, industries, people, engagement, collaborations, innovation. Like the nature of technology, that certainly, and I'm only speaking from my SPP's perspective, and I dare say it's applicable across the board as well. But technology is so pervasive, it touches us all in different ways, in different sectors as well. And personally, I'm biased. I find that hugely interesting. But if students are wondering whether or not it is for them, you're spoiled for choice when it comes to investigating how technology has evolved, how it's been embraced, how it's been resisted across both cultures and organizations for years. And if it's something that you are thinking about, how can this be achieved? How can it be measured? How can it be evaluated? How can we make sure that whatever we build will be embraced by the general end user? Then I think you're probably one step closer to acknowledging that, yeah, there is a passion there is an interest there. And what better way really to kind of push that forward than touching base with myself or any of the Stevens or Andrew with what our programs are offering, and we can chat about it further and to see whether or not your interests are aligned with the output of our programs.
Fabulous. Yeah, 2 podcasts I would recommend are Pivot and Hard Fork. I listen to those all the time, and it's more about tech drama. Like, I'm obsessed with Elon Musk and everything that he's doing wrong in the world.
Well, if we're looking at podcasts, I'm going to throw one out there as well. So the Dark Side Diaries, it's a really interesting podcast, and it takes a look ultimately at the dark side of technology and how people are manipulating it, how people are utilizing it for personal gain, how cyber criminals are attacking weak points in organization. It's very interesting. And again, if that's just going to fuel your interest of technology in specific areas, by all means, go down that rabbit hole. There's an awful lot there to explore.
Fabulous. Stephen McCarthy?
Yeah, I think Stephen said well. I think it's a really exciting sector to be in. I suppose the only thing maybe I'd add is to also note that it's a team sport. I think some people think of tech very much as the developer alone in their bedroom coding for hours on end, but really it's about working in teams, and I think it will build on a lot of your experiences also outside of academia, and there's definitely a creative aspect as well. So definitely, I think we're all biased on the call that we find it a really interesting sector, but I would really encourage you, don't let any fears hold you back about maybe assumptions you have about the tech sector and what it involves, but instead just embrace the change, and if it really interests you, I would say go for it.
And Andrew, the person who proves that you don't have to be called Stephen to work as well.
So so I'm going to assume that if you decide that you want to do any of the courses that you heard about this morning, that you kind of have an interest in technology, and like I think that's really, really important. But one of the things that I would recommend if I was giving advice is just to do a little bit of research in terms of the kinds of roles that you can get, because you're going to be in this weird scenario where you've done a non-technical undergraduate program, you join UCC, and within a month of joining, there's companies coming in trying to hire people for roles that you've never heard of. So technology has this wide kind of variety of different roles. So do a little bit of research about what kind of roles and what is entailed in these roles, because, as I said, you're applying for jobs for roles that you haven't heard of before. So, you know, by the end of the year, you'll be totally up to date and you'll know everything. But at the start, you're applying for roles. So do a little bit of background research on the kind of technology jobs that are available and what the students from the different programs end up doing. I think that's the advice that I'd pass on.
Brilliant. And I think you can actually use ChatGPT to do that as well. I think that you can put in titles and say, give me the main types of roles, you know, within different industries, and, you know, use that to explore it as well. So that's fantastic advice. And finally, Stephen, our third Stephen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well, with Andrew's point. I think also, look, tech has touched so many different things in the world, that you can kind of come from your own interests anyway, and you can definitely find ways in and across. You know, I know I've seen a broad range of students from a broad range of backgrounds here. We've had students who did undergrads in purely in visual design, who, like, through working with the visual design technology, and got more interested in the technical side of things and kind of came at it through that, and then sort of specialize as they go on. Because tech, like, as has been said already, is a huge place, and there's a very big difference between something like signal processing and something like front-end development. They're like entirely different worlds. And so do kind of like dig in and realize that, like, it's a deep world as opposed to just a broad world, and you're going to end up specializing, and to have a think about what it is you enjoy doing, and then what kind of specialism might line up with that.
Perfect. And we have one final question for Andrew regarding so what are the challenging aspects of the coursework, and are there any recommended resources for staying ahead of the subjects before the start of the term?
So I suppose, like all the programs, everything is taught from entry level. So I think we kind of tend to look for students that are kind of curious, that are open to ambiguity, that they're kind of well motivated. The real challenges is for our courses that you're trying to balance this kind of design and technology and business at the same time. So we want students to be kind of analytical thinking, but also to kind of, you know, I suppose augment that with that creative mindset as well. So sometimes students find that they prefer the design subjects, or they prefer the technology subjects, but we'd always make the argument that even if you don't want to be a software developer, having those skills enables you to have a really meaningful conversation with the development team and the business to be able to gather requirements and translate them so that the software development team can implement them. So I think even if you're not really passionate about software development, knowing some of it and knowing the fundamentals can really be a superpower in your career in technology.
Brilliant. And I suppose just to let everyone know, like, on the UCC course pages, if you look up the actual programs, like, all the modules are clickable. You can deep dive into them a bit more. The learning outcomes are out there. So there's fantastic wealth of information up on our UCC pages. All right, Phil, I'll hand it over to you to close.
Thanks, Mairead. Yeah, I think that's it. Can't see any additional questions. So thanks very much, everybody, for joining the session today. Really hope you found it helpful, that you kind of have a better sense of the programs, and that we'll hopefully see some of you on campus in September. And as well, thanks to Mairead as well for co-hosting this and kind of leading on organising this, and of course to our presenters, to Andrew and Stevens as well, for taking the time out to, you know, put together the material for today and to talk us through the programs in such detail. And I think it's been very helpful for all of us. So thanks very much, everyone. And to the attendees, we will send out a recording to you in the next week or so you can watch any of this back as well, if you want to, and we'll make it available to others who couldn't join us live. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll be in touch again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Mairead. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for talking to you.
Thanks. See you.